will actually go ahead from where we left yesterday evening. I had actually given you at that time 6 possible methods which have been defined in RFC 3261, which actually can be used. Out of these, 2 actually can be sent without creation of any session, without basically technically creating any dialogue. So, one of them is option, other one is invite. So, this I have not told, I am telling it for first time. Invite we are already aware of. So, invite, egg and cancel are technically used for setting up the session, buy is for terminating, register is for registering, and options is for querying the other entity. What are the capabilities with that server actually. Okay. So, the request URI which is formed, this universal resource identifier. So far I have only told about SIP, for example, atlanta.com kind of thing. So, I have only talked about so far this thing, but as far as RFC is concerned, when you make an implementation, you need not only use this, you can actually use SIP, you can use SIP S, even other kind of URI standards can be followed, and you can even implement those URIs. URIs also can be used in the system, that is permitted. RFC as per that does not say anything specifically. Only the problem is, if you implement some other kind of URI scheme, then it is the problem of the SIP entity. It has to figure out what has to be done with that, whether it has to be mapped onto another SIP URI or it has to be mapped to a non-SIP URI, another one, but that will be headache of the entity. As a SIP we will not bother, but we require, so this is what we call the scheme. So, SIP and SIP-S are 2 schemes, you can even use other schemes. URI structure has to be, there has to be a domain name. From domain name you will find out where the request actually has to go. So, that is the only important thing. So, domain name is important, but scheme actually can change. So, in fact, for telephony there has been already a scheme which was built, so which can be used alternately. This is as per RFC 2806, scheme is known as tel. So, you might have actually seen this thing at lot of places. Is a telephony thing, or maybe whatever is a domain name kind of concept which can be there. So, tel URI is also there. So, this also can be used. This is one example, there are many others which people have built over the time. But the translation from this non-SIP URI to SIP URI or non-SIP to non-SIP is a responsibility of the entity which is implementing the protocol. But you can use even non-SIP URIs, that is one important thing. Okay, usually because when I am been telling, people will actually conceive an idea, a notion that always SIP URI has to be used. No, it is not needed. You can use something else also. So, now coming to the status line, because last time it was the request thing which was actually talked about. So, either there was a request line or oblique status line. So, request line structure I have defined last time. So, status line so now mostly it's I am just discussing is about the rules which have to be followed. So, status line typically will be written as, this should be equal to so this should contain a SIP version, a single space character, status code, another single space character, and then of course reason phrase, and in the end you have to have CRLF, carriage return line feed character, which has to be present. So, that is a BNF definition for the status line. So, request line I have already told. Reason phrase, PHA will not come, sorry, this A should not have been there. So, this is basically human readable entity, this will not be interpreted by the machine, this will be interpreted by the machine, this you are going to write so that some entity might be actually using an older version of RFC or SIP V1, so in that case you will behave accordingly, or you will reject if it is not as per your this thing. So, you have to specify. When SIP V3 for example will come, so V2 and V3 machines will coexist. So, depending on what kind of response is coming or what kind of request is coming, you have to behave in that way. So, usually when you are going to implement a machine or implement a software, you will ensure that your implementation can handle both kind of requests. So, you do not have to implement only one, but you have to implement both kind of RFCs, SIP V2 as well as SIP V1. Usually that is commercial entities will do that. Okay. OpenSIP I think does provide both the options if you are going to use OpenSIP library. So, in fact, the complete implementation you can find out as opensip.org. So, this is where you can get the library, and then this is the complete implementation of this. So, tomorrow if you want to actually build up any application, you can use the code from here, or you can contribute back. Now, a status code here is 3-digit code, this I have already mentioned earlier. And only the first digit will specify, there are 3 digits, this will specify the classification. So, 101 or 100 to 199 series will correspond to what we call a provisional response code. And you can also write it as 1XX, XX represents going from 00 to 99. Specification does not talk about what will be for 00 will be used, what will be for 01, 02 something, but this is going to be provisional. But depending on usage, they essentially become norm. So, this is there in other RFC, not in this one. So, this typically for example is provisional, means that request is received and we are continuing to process the request. I think this I have mentioned earlier sometime back also. Similarly, you will have 2XX category, this corresponds to success. So, action has been or method has been successfully received, or action has been successfully received, it is understood and it is accepted, that is what it means actually. So, 200 is okay, for example 200, there can be other variant also, but most of them will signify it is a success. Okay. Then you will have 3XX code which can come, this is usually for redirection. So, this says further action need to be taken in order to complete the request, that is what the meaning is. Four XX is client error. Client is the one who has sent the request, response is sent by server. So, something which has come from the client is malformed, there is an error actually in that. So, I am not able to parse and understand what was the request, that is the meaning of this 4XX. Okay, so, technically this request will contain either bad syntax or cannot be fulfilled at this server, that is what it means. See, for example, you are sending a message to registrar and you send an invite to registrar will not understand, it can only understand register request, and the response will be success when the registration happens. Now, that is the only thing which can be done, nothing else. But so in that case, it will say I cannot fulfill this request. So, whatever you are sending me is an invalid thing. So, that is what the 4XX is reserved for. Then you will have
Sir, in the Alice Bob example, sir, 486 and 488 were sent, sir, from the server side, that is from the Bob side. So Bob should be the server then, sir. Not from
What was that 488 for?
486 was, sir, busy and 488 was not acceptable.
So it's actually assuming the client is in error because I am busy, he should be aware of that. Maybe that's it's not the server error. Server can still fulfill the request, but as of now I am not possible because it is coming at the wrong time most likely, that's the meaning. So it's a 4 series was given in that. So there is 5 and 6 also. Let me just come to that. Okay, I have not noted it down. Okay, I have not noted down 5xx and 6xx, but so there is a 5xx also. I think that's a server error, if I remember correctly, and there is 6xx, I think global failure. Yeah, I think I had written it some time back. It must be there on some other sheet. The same thing gets repeated actually. So that will be the status code. Now coming to the header fields. So far we have not discussed header fields. It's only a samples actually were shown. So moving to from request line to header fields. So header fields will contain typically a structure which is going to be a header name and header value, field name and field value technically. So a structure will usually be header. This will be usually consist of some header name, so that's a grammar actually. Header value, so a star actually shows that there can be variable number of parameters, a variable number of values which can exist. Field value, there will be comma, so this can repeat. H colon is this, 2 dots or colon actually. H colon is written in the grammar, so I have just copied that. Actually it's colon. So header will usually consist of multiple lines. Each line usually will contain one field. We can actually have multi-line fields also are possible, and every header field will start from character number 1 in a new line. If in the beginning there is an space, then it is not a new field, that is nothing but the previous the header field in the earlier line has been broken. So I can split one single long line into multiple lines, but I have to ensure in the beginning the first character should be either at least one white space or one tab. So that's a condition. Okay, I will come to this particular example. So usually header field format is going to be field name. So I want to actually do away with the space, so I am going to put a dash in between actually to be more clear. And this will be usually a field name. And you can have arbitrary amount of white space here before and after the colon, that is permitted. Okay, so this is not illegal. So in case if you write for example some field which is there is usually white spaces are not there, you will note that wherever I am putting, I am actually putting a hyphen for joining the words and make it a single word. I am not putting a space because the space is taken as a separator, is a delimiter actually for the various fields. So again this is a structure, but that is fine. So subject I am not writing capital, in fact it is case insensitive, capital and small does not matter. For example, in email you might have seen that you send an email to me with full capitals, you send it to me like this, will both the mails reach to me or not? They will always reach to me. Is case insensitive actually, case does not matter. So, same is true even for SIP URI, same is basically is true for any header field, except under special cases which are specified, or there is a string under the quotations. If there is a string under the quotations, then it is case sensitive thing, entity. Case does matter in that case, they are not same. Okay. So, I think this again has been taken from, so if a parameter is under inverted quotes, that whatever is there under the quotes has to be case sensitive. Okay. So, in fact that is also true for HTTP URLs. So, subject I can actually put no space, large number of space, and I can write say lunch. I am taking same example given in the RFC, or I can now put, so these are all valid whatever I am writing. I can write all three are valid actually headers as far as the syntax is concerned. Subject is I think is not the header field there, I have not verified that. But the what is the recommended practice is, so when you write a software or code, you have to ensure that you follow the recommended practice, but you should be willing to accept, assume that the other guy who is going to send can send you a malformed thing, he may not be following the recommendation, but you are supposed to follow. Okay. So, it should not be arbitrary. So, other guy who is sending you the message may not follow, that is fine, you will be you should be able to accept all this, but when you send, it is recommended you are always going to put no white space here or no space character, and there will be exactly one space character and then whatever is the value. So, that is the recommended format. And header fields can be split over multiple lines, they can be extended, that is permitted, because every new header field will be starting from first character in a new line. So, that is essentially Q is being used for the encoding purpose, so that you can actually split the same header field over multiple lines. So, again taking an example when this is being constructed, for example you write, so I am using a standard, there is no white space, one white space, I can put up a string, but if I write something like this, so I think this is very similar sentence which is there in the text. Actually these will be all, this will whole thing will be one value. This is not under inverted quotes, but it is one value because values are separated by comma. I can have multiple values for one field name, okay, but then they will be separated by comma. There is only one comma, so this is one field, this is another field in this case. So, another value actually, field value. Field name is subject. So, before this comma, this is the field, this is the field. Special meaning can be taken off if I put inverted quotes, then it is a one single value. I can have an option to split into two lines. I can put like this. Now, if I put this is invalid actually, because I am starting from the first character in the next line. So, this has to be then a header actually field. I cannot do that. So, this is basically an identification mechanism, so that on the receiver side your software can parse it easily and understand what is the message. So, there has to be at least one space or one tab or more than that, any number. So, usually the practice is wherever your first character starts, you will, that is the recommended practice. It actually becomes human readable, that is the reason actually why you do it this way. So, this is, in the earlier version both are same. So, I can have multi-line header fields. So, we have done this spacing stuff, we have done multi-line. The sequencing of headers, is that important?
In this CRLF will not be there
In the end, yes, CRLF will be there in the end.
in the format.
Because the next header has to start only from the new line. So, CRLF has to be there.
There also.
This is only for one header. I am actually, you are right, there has to be CRLF in the end. That is true. There has to be. There has to be. Yeah, formally if you put it.
And this asterisk inside that, what does it exactly signify? And
Where?
after that asterisk, comma.
This one.
Your header value means what?
Stick value. The stick indicates value.
Header value is this. This is the field.
Stick is variable length.
You can have multiple of them. Na? I can actually put, for example, subject colon, you can say lecture. So, that is the one value. You can put a comma, then you can say food, that is another value. You can put say school, that is another value. So, 3 values for this particular thing. In fact, this is equal to, interestingly, this is equal to, yeah, I will come to that. I was coming to the ordering, but let me give this a special ordering. This is nothing but equal to actually writing this subject lecture So, that is actually equal to 3 header fields. Header names or header field names can actually repeat, that is permitted, okay. And the order does matter. Order does matter, because if I actually, for example, move this thing on the top, then the structure this and this are not same. So, whatever is the sequence of the values here, in same order they should appear, that is important. See, for example, the problem is, for example, I am deciding a root field. Root says the message has to go from me to you first, and then from there to another guy, from there to another guy, okay. So, I am defining even the sequence by which the message should go. If I change the sequence, I can either define a root header, for example, I can say root colon, and I define a zip URI for zip colon a.abc.com. I can define another root b@ijk.com. Similarly, I define third one. So, this actually defines the sequence. I cannot disturb the sequence. Okay. I can write the third entry as. So, this is how the message will be forwarded. So, it has to go one by one. It has to first of all go to this. From there, it will be sent to this guy. From there, it will be sent to this. I can set up a multicast conference actually through this mechanism.
It is already written in BNF form. This is basically grammar you are writing.
Yeah, I am just giving what is the structure, what are the rules.
Just like a syntax.
Yeah, it is syntax specification. So, I can have C a raised power x y z. The equivalent of this as per this. So, as you are propagating, you can keep on deleting or removing. So, remember, via header field has to follow a sequence. Okay, you cannot simply swap, but I can also put them in comma separated form, that is permitted. A comma separates a field value, not the semicolon. I can also use semicolon. A field value can also have parameters. So a field value semicolon parameter name is equal to parameter value, and any number of parameters can be there. So that is also there in another extension in this. So root, for example, here will be, this is equivalent now. I have to put a comma, remember. Okay, there are multiple values. So I am now putting it in multi-line, so I should not start from the first character. So I can start somewhere here. I do not want a multi-line, I can write in this line itself. And of course, you have to use in all URIs, you have to use escaping. This I think I have already mentioned earlier. Okay. So all special characters have to be escaped in that case. Let me see if I know which all characters have to be. So the relative order here does matter, but relative order of fields actually does not matter unless the names are same. When the names are same, within them order does matter. They can be placed anywhere. Okay. So header field sequence, to you can put in the end, for example. From you can always put first. Only first thing has to be request line, and after that whatever is the header thing can be in any sequence. But if the names are same, within those things the order has to be maintained, because that is important. They all even can be combined into a one single entry. This combination cannot be done only for, now there is a recommendation again, it is not a rule. So when you are writing a software, so other guy can do anything.
Sir, who is setting this rule? Which path should be taken?
This is from the source. When you are sending an invite, that time you can decide. Na?
The client itself.
Client will give the route. Na?
But in your process,
It is like source routing.
anyhow I am having process server, sir, they can decide which one.
See, when this is route, these are users. I am not worried about proxies. I want to signal you, so I will tell my proxy to find a route to you and then pass the signal on to you after proper authentication. Then I say after you should now send a message to somebody else. So I will pass on this whole header to you. So it will go to you first, and then from there it will go to you, then from here it will go to you, then to the final destination, which is 2. So all 3 guys, intermediaries, will be informed. These are not proxies, these are clients.
So this is helpful, for example, setting up a conference.
Yes. A kind of overlaid multicasting when it has to be created. See, I do not want to communicate it to everybody, or I want to just same message has to be broadcasted to 5 guys. So it has to go in this particular sequence. Okay. So recommendation is that this particular fields root record proxy require. See, it does not matter whether I write a small letter or capital letter. I have told already it is case insensitive. I can write all capitals, I can write all smalls, it is permitted in this case. So one capital small, that is also going to be same. Okay.
First character should be capital.
Not necessary. See, I was at the mistake earlier, because that is the way it was written, and that makes it more legible and beautiful. That is the only thing. So that is a recommendatory practice, but need not be. So when you receive something, you should prepare yourself for the worst. When you are sending, follow the recommendation. Okay. Then max forward. and proxy authorization. These fields are recommended to be always on the top of the message. Why they have to be kept on the top of the message? Why you don't want them to be at the bottom? What's the benefit?
Computation will be less.
No, computation will still be the same. Only thing, it will take less time to parse, because the message, when the message is received at a proxy, these are going to receive all these header fields first. So parsing can finish much faster for the proxy. So when I am sending a message to you, all the header fields which I am expecting you to actually parse, require, should be always kept on the top of the header. That way you will be able to parse it much faster, because every header field which comes, it starts a separate computation process after parsing. So this parsing can, the computation can start much earlier. When it comes at the later stage, it will be starting much later. So I can save time in setting up of the calls or managing the calls. Again, this is a recommendation, not mandatory thing.
But you should always start with the request line first of all.
First thing will be always a request and a status line, that you cannot change. After that, there are headers, header fields. So I am only talking about header fields now, not the request and status line. And then there is in the end there is a CRLF, and then there is a message body. So message body also can be of various type. It can be a binary object. Okay, only the content length will be specified. This I have told, multiple field values can be combined into one single field value in this way by using comma separated field values, actually list. This combination, combining cannot be done for certain kind of headers. You can do it for everything else, except there are 4 cases where this cannot be done. Here you cannot do it for this particular header field name. You cannot do it for authorization. You cannot do it for proxy authenticate. And you cannot do it for proxy authorization. So why you think it is not permitted in this case? You simply, I think, drop the header fields after looking at it. You don't have to reframe them in this case. Okay. In earlier cases, you have to reframe. For example, this, when you reach to this particular route, this guy you have already reached, so this will be dropped out of this line, only 2 will be left out. You are reframing. For this, reframing is not permitted. I think it's probably because the hash is also must be going to check for the validity of whatever data you are sending in this. Well, that's my most likely guess. I have not figured out the information, because everything has to do either with authentication and authorization. So whenever you are sending some keyword or something, it's a good idea to actually always also send a hash with that. Hash will be broken the moment you put that thing, and hash should be part of that string.
So you were saying about that comma and semicolon, sir.
Yeah, that's now I am coming. So now field names also can have parameters, field values. So I think one of the example was tag, which we did, or branch in case of your invite and response thing. Now that's addition. Now remember, the field values are still separated by commas. This I found slightly strange, because usually whatever is there as one single entity is separated by semicolon. So within that I can separate the subfields by commas. That's usually is the practice normally in English language, but here it is done the other way around. I don't know the reason why this is done this way, but that's it. So a field value by definition, okay, I will not write, I will write field name So, header field will look something like this. This is the header field. It will contain a field name colon field value, any number, a semicolon, parameter name is equal to parameter value, and any number of parameters can be attached, that is why the star is there, and this forms one value actually. If there is another value, then it has to be comma and then the next chain will start.
So play a little bit.
See, this whole thing is technically one parameter, one value, one field value. It is only one field value, but the field value has been appended with parameters. When the second field value has to be done, there has to be comma and the next field value will come, which can also be of the same form. So, branch and tag thing which we had earlier was nothing but parameters. They always took the form semicolon, whatever was the parameter name is equal to parameter value.
Can't one field may have more than one parameter values?
They can have more than one parameter value. It is permitted, you can have more than, that is why star is put. But the same parameter name cannot be used more than once. A parameter name cannot exist for more than once, it cannot be repeated. Repetition is not permitted. Within this field value, I am putting parameter 1 is equal to parameter value. Then I cannot put semicolon parameter 1 is equal to another parameter value, no, because both are parameter 1. So, what I am saying is, if I write A colon B, I say par is equal to XYZ, I can put semicolon, I cannot, now this is invalid, because this and this are same, it is invalid.
But if it gets separated by a comma, then we can.
I can put par 1, then it is valid. Yes, if I put this thing, comma, I am now going to have another value which can be C, and for which now I can use the same parameter. This is a valid formation. So, basically you can send this, these are basically like parameters. The way tag is, for example, a random string which is generated for every to and from fields. There is a branch which is there in the via header field actually which was put. So, those are all parameters actually. So, case sensitivity, I think one of the good example is contact. I can write, no, this is not, I am not going to put another field, I am putting a parameter, so I have to put a semicolon. This so both are same or not same? They are going to be same because all things are case insensitive.
Last example, sir, we saw that contact header field, sir. In that we were resolving to IP address. Resolving to IP address, not.
I can put domain name also. No? pc33.atlanta.com.
Yes, PC33. That will be the because this will be SIP.
Right. Currently, it is given like this. I can put pc33.atlanta.com also fine. I am giving an example.
What is expire period?
Time out.
Contact will expire after this much time.
This is the at a time of restriction telling you this.
You are telling you have to connect to me, but I will be probably moving out. So, with after this time, I will not be available here unless I actually send you another invite or another update. You have to keep on updating.
Who had this field?
the source. See, when you are going to send a message to somebody, you will add your contact.
Contact is expire field.
Expire also you will add, na? You are here, say for example, in next 60 minutes, after that certainly you will not be here. So you kind of give a lease, for this IP address you keep on connecting me only for this much period. After this, if I don't send you another lease kind of thing or another update, you simply assume that I am not there on this address. It's like if you are going to your internet cafe, you want to log in. You would like to always set whether I work, don't work, after 15 minutes, this system should log out. I should be logged out of it actually, and all my data should be erased. But if you are going to work for another 15 minutes, before the 15 minutes expire, you will send another update. You will again do the authentication. So one authentication is valid only for this much period. So you have to again do another authentication for increase your validity period. I think it's for that purpose. Logical choice is this the way it should have been designed. Now these header fields which are there, they are again can be categorized. Some header fields will be existing only in requests, some will be in responses, some will be in both. So these are categorized as request header fields and response header fields correspondingly. Now you are writing an engine, a software basically, or a server, you end up in getting a message, a request actually has come to you and it gets a header field which corresponds to a response. What you will do with that? Should you ignore the whole message? Should you ignore only that header field? Or should you start making noise? The rule is very simple. In internet, if you don't understand anything, simply ignore it. So ignore that header field. Whatever you can understand, do all the parsing, all actions have to be taken as per that. That's the rule. And that's a thumb rule followed everywhere in the almost all internet protocols. If you understand, it's fine. If you don't, forget it. Now there is another interesting thing. So far I have given you all kind of very long names of header fields. SIP also does have something called short forms of this. Short form of all header field names does exist and you can use that. So when you write a software, your software should actually understand both forms. A proxy midway can actually change your header field name from longer to shorter form or shorter to longer form. If there are multiple times a field is existing, some of them can be in short and some of them can be long, that is also permitted. So both are valid entries, but they both will mean the same thing. And why this short form concept was actually invented? No. There is a maximum transmission unit, maximum size of a UDP packet. Okay. You cannot transmit larger than a size. So if your message itself become too large, then what you will do? If you say you cannot, your things whatever you are trying to transmit cannot be packed into one single UDP, start compressing, start using shorter form, that is the immediate thing. If you are using a TCP transport, this is a streamed transport, that is okay. So in that case size can be anything, but in UDP it cannot be anything. So it is basically for that compression purpose, to conserve on the space. So one is human readable, other one is also human readable, but it is a short form, acronym kind of thing. Okay, now coming to there is another important thing, that UDP it is fine. When you will get the message, your first line will always be request line or a status line. But if you are not using UDP, you are using TCP. I sent an earlier message, after that I was silent, I sent some white spaces or CRLFs, and then I send the next message. Then your first line will not be a request line after the silence on the stream thing. So again in your software, irrespective of whether it is a UDP transport being used or TCP, if you receive a message, all CRLFs, carriage return line feeds, which are happening before request line has to be simply discarded. This problem will not happen if you are using UDP transport. Okay. So, but this has to be explicitly programmed, otherwise this will create confusion, because CRLF is end of header.
One second, sir. One second.
What happens is when you are having a streamed transport between two entities, so you keep on sending bytes and bytes will arrive. It is not one packet or a message is being encapsulated into a UDP packet and sent. So, you have sent a message, after that silent, you might send a lot of CRLFs or whatever it is, and then suddenly you got the first request line. So, previous message end finished, then you get a request line, in between there can be white spaces. These have to be simply discarded actually by design. If it is UDP packet will come, you will not see any white space, things will start with request line, but not with the TCP transport. So, with the stream transport this particular issue will come. So, that also has to be resolved. Okay.
But after those white spaces in TCP, since it is connection oriented, you will still get the request line. No sir, you will start off from header field.
You always get, the first thing is always the request line, then header fields,
Yes sir.
and then CRLF, and then the body. Body length will be always, there is always content length will always be part of your header. You cannot have a header without content length field, it will at least be 0.
After sir one message is passed, then in TCP, because it is connection oriented, we get lot of white spaces, CRLFs. Then again we get the message. So again that message will have request lines.
First request line will be there always.
So
Every message will have a request or response.
so the TCP only has to
A request
take
or
out
status, sorry. Yeah.
the TCP only has to take out the white spaces.
Yes. See, but when you are building up your transaction user, remember you are building up a transaction client or transaction server. Okay. Client transaction or server transaction which are going to use a transport. So, transport is at the bottom as a transaction user or as a basically client or server transaction. You do not bother about the transport, transport is somebody else's headache. So, you have to remove all that thing in your client transaction or server transaction actually, which I create. They actually now receive the message, parse it, and they invoke the code in transaction user to correspondingly to do whatever is required, but it remains there to maintain the state of the transaction.
So you mentioned that the coding of these messages, I mean, when I was speaking or voice telephoning, periods of silence or blank spaces are discarded in the machine.
No, that is in media. This is purely signaling, setting up of the call. Once the call has been set up between two endpoints, in this fashion for example, when they talk to each other, then I am sending over RTP, real time protocol and real time streaming protocol I can use, and I can send MP3 for example in both directions for audio. So, MP3 encoding, because I do not want to send the packets unnecessarily, I can simply keep on, if you are speaking then only I will encode and send the packets, otherwise I will not. Only heartbeats you will keep on sending, that the connection is a live media connection, and here the playback will happen whenever the media packet is there. Otherwise, just to make sure you do not get annoyed, some noise can be played, so as if you feel as if connection is still alive. So, walkie talkies you do not see, either you have a something coming or nothing coming, that actually usually is annoying. Telephone we do not see, we continuously actually see something coming from the other side. Even if there is silence, you will get some hum. So, this probably can be locally created to conserve on the bandwidth. Skype, I do not know how does it do it, but Skype does have a silence detection and it cuts off the voice when it is not required. But even if there is a silence and if you are doing differential encoding in the voice, you still conserve on the bandwidth, because the differential change is very small. So, your voltage levels when they are varying in time, so these differential changes what are sent. So, if the noise is like this, your differential change is very small, you have to send a very small number of bits every sample interval actually. So, anyway are consuming much less bandwidth in this. So, there is a live compression, differential encoding, silence detection, everything is there actually in this. There is one more last thing, there is in HTTP for example, you can send a body there is a message CRLF and then there is a message body where you put the payload part. This payload HTTP allows in chunked, means you can actually define multiple bodies with each one of them having their own content length type, content length basically specification. So, larger message body can be broken into smaller parts and can be transported through HTTP. Now, this is not permitted in SIP, although it is going to use almost same kind of MIME type, same content length, content type, content encoding as HTTP, but chunked body transfer is not permitted with SIP. Okay. So, I think that was kind of an introduction to SIP. We have not this basically giving all the syntax, how things will be done, and some issues we have tried to understand. So, with that actually I am now closing the all lecture series of EE629. So, next class I will be just taking up all the questions regarding whatever has been taught in the whole semester. So, discussion about whatever questions you have. So, my request is you please send me all the questions which you want me to discuss before end, so that I can at least go through the text. Even if you do not do it, I will try to give to my best whatever answers I can give in the class. So, next week is on Thursday actually, last class. So, it will be all discussion about this thing, whatever we have done so far in the whole semester, and of course, your feedback, suggestions, because I think we should be open, and lot of you are actually practicing engineers, I am not one. People who work in the field knows actually much more, they can also provide their inputs.